We were mocking my husband at a neighbourhood party when, to everyone's shock, he stood up and announced it was over. For good. Hey Reddit, this is a throwaway account because what happened is so humiliating that I can't risk my husband finding out I shared it here. He follows my main account. I feel so lost right now and don't know what to do. My name is Chloe, I'm 24, and my husband Ryan is 26. We've been married for 3 years, having met back in college. I never thought our marriage would unravel like this, but here we are. Looking back, I realised this all stemmed from a mix of misunderstandings and my own reckless behaviour. I apologise in advance if my thoughts are scattered. I'm still processing everything. Ryan has always been the quieter one, an introvert who prefers cosy evenings at home with a book or a movie. I, on the other hand, am the complete opposite, a social butterfly who thrives on hosting parties and being in the spotlight. Ryan, despite his reserved nature, supported me in my love for socialising, even when it wasn't his thing. But somewhere along the way, I took his support for granted and pushed things too far. To give you some context, Ryan has always been the kind of guy who puts others before himself, especially me. He'd go out of his way to make me happy, often sacrificing his own needs in the process. For example, he'd wake up early to bring me my favourite coffee or cancel his own plans if I needed him. He was thoughtful, caring, and completely devoted. I used to admire these traits, but as time passed, I started taking them for granted. Worse, I began to see his kindness as weakness. I convinced myself that Ryan would never stand up to me, that he loved me too much to ever leave. This belief made me reckless in how I treated him. When I decided I wanted to be a stay-at-home wife, even though we didn't have children yet, Ryan agreed without second thought. He worked long hours to provide for us, while I did less and less around the house. Many days he'd come home from work exhausted, only to find that I hadn't even bothered to cook dinner. Yet, he never once complained. He'd simply roll up his sleeves and do whatever needed to be done. Over time, I stopped seeing Ryan's devotion as endearing and began resenting him for it. I wanted someone strong and assertive, someone who could challenge me, not someone who catered to my every whim. I started spending more and more time with my friends, going out and having fun while Ryan stayed home. Behind his back, I mocked him. At parties, I'd joke with my friends about how much of a pushover he was. They'd laugh and encourage me, saying I deserved better, that I should be with someone who matched my energy. Their words only fueled my disdain. Meanwhile, Ryan kept trying to hold our relationship together. He'd surprise me with gifts, plan romantic dinners, and try to have meaningful conversations about our future. But I had already emotionally checked out. I craved excitement and passion, not the steady devotion Ryan offered. Our marriage became a toxic cycle. The more Ryan tried to win me back, the more I pushed him away. And now, I'm left wondering if I've made the biggest mistake of my life. I began flirting with other men, basking in the attention and the intoxicating thrill of being desired. Ryan noticed, of course, but he never confronted me. Instead, he just tried harder to make me happy, clinging to the hope that his love would somehow bring me back to him. The way I treated Ryan didn't go unnoticed by others. My snide comments, dismissive attitude, and constant eye-rolling when he tried to contribute to conversations set the tone. When we were out with friends, I sometimes ignored him entirely. Our friends picked up on my behaviour and mirrored it, treating Ryan with less respect. They joked about how accommodating he was, teasing him for being whipped. Ryan, always the peacemaker, would laugh along as if it didn't bother him. But I occasionally caught a flicker of hurt in his eyes before he quickly masked it with a smile. He'd shrug off the humiliation, saying he was just happy to see me enjoying myself. What I failed to realise was the damage I was doing to him, how my actions were chipping away at his self-esteem. Even his few remaining friends began to distance themselves, unable to understand why he tolerated my behaviour. They told him he deserved better, that he needed to stand up for himself. But Ryan always defended me, saying I was just going through a phase and that he loved me unconditionally. The more Ryan defended me, the weaker he appeared to everyone around us. And even to me. I began to lose respect for him entirely. It became a vicious cycle. My behaviour made others disrespect him, and their disrespect made me see him as less. Meanwhile, I sought out friends who encouraged me, who told me I deserved better than Ryan, who fed into my growing dissatisfaction with our relationship. Ryan, on the other hand, retreated further into himself. He buried himself in work, taking on extra hours and throwing his energy into projects. He grew quieter, more reserved, and avoided social situations unless absolutely necessary. When we did go out together, he stayed in the background, letting me take the spotlight. I was too caught up in my own selfish world to notice how much of a toll it was taking on him. Looking back, I can see how unfair I was. Ryan was a good man, kind, loving, and devoted. He didn't deserve the way I treated him. I let my insecurities and need for validation destroy our relationship. I pushed away the one person who loved me unconditionally. There are countless moments I regret, specific times when I disrespected and undermined Ryan. Since I'm already venting, I'll share a few of them with you. Apologies if this gets lengthy. It started a few months before the neighbourhood party, around the time I really began to pull away from Ryan. I had reconnected with some old college friends who had recently moved into the neighbourhood. They were lively, carefree, and seemed to embody the kind of excitement I thought I wanted in my life. One Friday night, my friend Tina invited me to a girls' night out. Ryan, as supportive as ever, encouraged me to go, even insisting I take some extra money for any unexpected expenses. I didn't think twice and gladly accepted. What was supposed to be a simple dinner turned into a night of bar hopping and dancing. That night, fueled by alcohol and the thrill of my friend's approval, I openly mocked Ryan for the first time. As the drinks flowed, so did my careless words. I told them how Ryan would do anything for me, how he constantly bent over backward to please me, and how he allowed me to be a stay-at-home wife even though we had no kids. Tina and the others laughed and egged me on, and I basked in their attention. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a gnawing sense of guilt that I tried to ignore. The morning after my night out, Ryan, as always, had made me breakfast. He asked about my evening, and I gave him a vague response, avoiding details. I saw the concern in his eyes, but he didn't press further. Instead, he smiled gently and told me he was glad I had fun and that he loved me. Strangely, the guilt I initially felt was quickly replaced by irritation, and I brushed him off. In the following weeks, I started going out with my friends more frequently. Ryan, despite looking visibly tired, continued to support me. Our conversations became shorter and our interactions grew strained. His disappointment was palpable, but I ignored it, reassuring myself that Ryan would never leave me. One evening, Tina and a few other friends came over for a movie night. Ryan, being his usual thoughtful self, cooked dinner for us before retreating to the bedroom to give us space. As the wine flowed, the conversation shifted to relationships. Tina, comparing Ryan to her own boyfriend, remarked how devoted Ryan was and how lucky I was to have him. That sparked a wave of jokes and comments about Ryan being too good, wrapped around my finger and an unquestioning pushover. Caught up in the laughter and wine, I joined in. I teased about Ryan's habits, his devotion, and even joked that he'd probably ask how high if I told him to jump off a cliff. The laughter from my friends made me feel powerful, even though I knew deep down it was wrong. Ryan must have overheard everything, but he didn't say a word. The next morning, he acted as though nothing had happened, kissing me on the forehead and telling me he loved me before heading to work. I noticed the hurt in his eyes, but quickly pushed away the pang of guilt it stirred. The final straw came a week before the neighbourhood party. Ryan and I had attended a barbecue at a neighbour's house. It was a sunny, cheerful day, and Ryan, as always, was the perfect host. He manned the grill, made sure everyone had enough to eat and drink, and chatted warmly with the guests. At some point, the conversation among a group of us turned to relationships, and the effort our partners put into making us happy. I started bragging about Ryan, how he catered to my every whim, and was the perfect husband. My friends laughed, making jokes about how whipped Ryan was and how I had him completely under control. Ryan was standing nearby, listening quietly to everything being said. Instead of feeling proud of his devotion, a wave of shame washed over me. But my need to impress my friends overpowered my guilt, and I laughed along, even throwing in a few more jokes at Ryan's expense. That night, when we got home, Ryan didn't say a word. He went straight to bed, leaving me alone in the living room. I sat there for a long time, conflicted with anger and regret. I knew I'd pushed him too far, but I didn't know how to make things right. I convinced myself, as I always did, that things would blow over and Ryan would forgive me. Little did I know, the barbecue had been Ryan's breaking point. Then came the neighbourhood party, the beginning of the end. It was one of our usual gatherings, a tradition in our close-knit community, meant to be a time to catch up, relax, and enjoy ourselves. Ryan was, as ever, helpful and kind, manning the grill while I mingled with my friends. After a few drinks, the conversation drifted to our husbands, and inevitably to Ryan. My friends, well aware of how much he doted on me, found it amusing. Someone joked about how lucky I was to have a husband who would do anything for me. Feeling tipsy, I laughed and chimed in, making light of Ryan's devotion. I joked about how he never said no, how he was always eager to please, and how sometimes it felt like he didn't have a backbone. My friends joined in, laughing and tossing comments about how whipped he was and how nice it must be to have such a compliant husband. Amid the laughter, I noticed a sudden silence. Turning around, I saw Ryan standing there. His face was pale, his expression unreadable, but his eyes said everything. He had heard it all. Ryan walked over to the table where everyone was seated, his face serious and unreadable. He looked directly at me and said, "We need to talk." His tone caught me off guard, but I reluctantly agreed. As he led me to a quieter corner of the yard, I could feel every set of eyes following us. Although the party continued, the tension in the air was palpable, and I could sense that everyone was watching and waiting. When we stopped, Ryan turned to me and said with a calm but firm voice, "I'm done." At first, I thought he was joking. I even tried to laugh it off, but Ryan didn't flinch. He wasn't smiling. He went on to say he was tired. Tired of being disrespected by me, tired of being humiliated in front of others, and tired of watching me make everyone else see him as less. He told me he was leaving the party immediately and didn't want me to return to his house. "Your things will be on the porch," he said before walking off without waiting for my response. I stood there stunned, the reality of his words sinking in as the murmurs around me grew louder. I didn't have to hear them to know what they were thinking. They might not have caught every word, but from the look on our faces and Ryan's abrupt departure, it wasn't hard to piece things together. I hurried after Ryan, desperate to stop him. By the time I reached the house, he was already inside, packing up my belongings. I begged him to stop. I cried, pleaded, and tried everything I could think of to get through to him. But he wasn't the same Ryan I had always known. He was resolute, his heart seemingly closed off to me. He didn't argue or raise his voice. He simply ignored me and continued packing my things. When he finished, he carried my belongings to the porch, threw them outside, and firmly told me to leave. I refused at first, clinging to the hope that I could somehow salvage the situation. But he warned me that if I didn't go, he would call the police. I knew he wasn't bluffing, and with no other option, I left. Walking down the street with as much as I could carry, tears streamed down my face. My neighbours were watching from their porches and windows, including my so-called friends. But no one approached me. They just stared, their pity and a judgment clear in their expressions. I ended up at a nearby park, my mind racing as I tried to process what had just happened. For so long, I had underestimated Ryan, thinking he would never stand up to me. I never believed he had the strength to make such a drastic decision. Now, I realised how deeply I had misjudged him. With no one else to turn to, I called my dad and asked him to pick me up. Thankfully, he came quickly, though he was clearly disappointed when I explained the situation. He didn't lecture me, but his silence said enough. He brought me back to his house, where I've been staying for the past few days, trying to figure out what to do next. I've tried reaching out to Ryan, calling and texting him, but he hasn't responded to anything. He's completely shut me out, and I don't know how to fix this. Update. Wow, Reddit. I wasn't expecting this level of toxicity. I get it. I was wrong. I don't need you all to keep hammering it into me. I came here looking for advice, not a flood of criticism. Yes, I made mistakes, huge ones, but the constant hate has been overwhelming, and I honestly regret posting here. To address some of the questions and accusations, no, I don't have a job. I mentioned that in my first post, so I don't understand why people keep asking. No, my relationship with Ryan isn't over, not if I have anything to say about it. I believe we can work things out, or at least I hope so. And no, this isn't fake. I have better things to do than create a throwaway account just to make up a story. I know I need to find a job and start rebuilding my life, but it's hard to focus on that when all I can think about is Ryan. I miss him more than I can put into words, and I hate that my actions have driven him away. If I could take it all back, I would in a heartbeat. But I know I can't. To those of you who've offered constructive advice, thank you. Your words have been a lifeline in this dark time. To those who came here just to insult me, please understand that I'm already dealing with the consequences of my actions. I don't need more negativity. I'm taking things one day at a time and trying to figure out how to make amends, to show Ryan that I can change. It's not going to be easy, but I'm determined to do whatever it takes. If anyone has real advice on how to navigate this, I'm all ears. Thank you for reading. Hey Reddit, I don't even know why I'm bothering to update here again, considering how toxic this place can be, but I guess I need somewhere to vent. First, let me just say how incredibly grateful I am for my parents. Without them, I'd be homeless right now. They've been my rock through all of this, and I honestly don't know what I'd do without their support. As for my so-called friends, I've realised they were never really my friends at all. Not a single one of them reached out after everything happened. Not a text, not a call. Tina and the rest of them are fake, horrible people. They witnessed what happened that night, and yet none of them bothered to check on me. I've blocked them all, because I now know they never cared about me in the first place. My husband Ryan finally talked to me, but it wasn't what I wanted to hear. He's adamant about the divorce. He won't change his mind, no matter what I say. Honestly, I think he'll regret this. One day, he'll realise what he's lost, but by then, it'll be too late. If he comes running back to me, I won't take him back. In the meantime, I'm trying to figure out my next steps. Everything feels so uncertain. I've been applying for jobs, but nothing solid has come through yet. It's discouraging, but I'm trying to stay hopeful. It's hard not to look back and wonder how everything fell apart so quickly. One moment, I felt like I had it all. Friends, a loving husband, and a comfortable life. The next, I was standing in a park, my life in shambles. Despite everything, I'm determined to move forward. I know I've made mistakes, big ones, and I'm willing to do the work to become a better person. But it's hard not to feel bitter about how things have turned out. I gave so much to my friends and husband, and now I'm left with nothing. To those of you who've been supportive, thank you. Your kindness has meant more to me than you'll ever know. To those who've been harsh and judgmental, I hope you never find yourself in a situation like mine. It's easy to throw stones from the outside, but it's a lot harder to pick up the pieces of your life when everything falls apart. For now, I'm focusing on finding a job, saving up some money, and eventually getting my own place. It's going to be a long road, but I'll get there. I don't need anyone's pity or judgment. I just need to keep moving forward. Final update. Hey, Reddit. It's been months since my last update. I stayed away because this platform became too toxic for me. The hateful messages and mean comments were overwhelming. Sure, there were a few supportive ones, but the negativity was too much. I decided to take a break from Reddit, but now I'm here to give you a final update since things have more or less settled. The divorce is finalised. So much has happened, and I'm still living with my parents. I have a job now, though it's low paying and something my dad helped me get. I hate it, but I don't have much of a choice. I need to stick with it for now, save up, gain some experience, and hopefully move on to something better. The divorce process itself was straightforward. Since the house belonged to Ryan before we got married, I didn't get much. I received a small amount of alimony because I was a stay-at-home wife, but it's not much. We didn't have kids or shared debts, so there weren't any custody or financial disputes. I tried to talk some sense into Ryan throughout the process, but he wouldn't budge. It's clear he's done with me. What hurts the most is that he seems happier without me. I don't even know how to process that. It makes me feel horrible. I know I screwed up, and I'll never forgive myself for it. This will probably be my last post on Reddit. The negativity here has been overwhelming, and I need to focus on rebuilding my life. To those who sent hate, get a life. To the few who offered kind or constructive words, thank you. Okay, so I know I said that was my last post, but something crazy happened and I had to share. Apparently, all the single friends who used to join me in mocking Ryan are now trying to date him. I found out recently when I ran into someone from the neighbourhood. Ironically, she was someone I didn't really talk to back when I was with Ryan because Tina didn't like her and discouraged me from hanging out with her. Thankfully, she accepted my apology and we had a long conversation. She told me about everything that's been happening in the neighbourhood. According to her, those same friends who laughed with me at Ryan's expense are now vying for his attention. The irony is almost too much to handle. She told me that my ex-husband didn't seem interested in any of them, which was honestly a relief. To be fair, they're all horrible people, and it's ironic how the same women who helped drive a wedge between us are now falling over themselves to get his attention. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's also a stark reminder of how superficial and disloyal they were. I suppose it's a lesson learned. Running into this old acquaintance turned out to be a small silver lining in the chaos of my life. Surprisingly, she was kind and didn't hold my past behaviour against me. She even offered to help if I ever needed anything, which was a relief. It's comforting to know there are still decent people out there, especially when so much of my trust in others has been shattered. These days, I'm focusing on piecing my life back together. The job I mentioned in my last update is still terrible, but at least it's a start. I'm saving up as much as I can in the hopes of eventually moving out of my parents' house and into my own apartment. It's not easy, but I'm determined to make it work. As for my ex-husband, we still don't talk. I've tried reaching out a few more times, but he's completely shut me out. I can't blame him. I was awful to him, and it's clear he's better off without me. Seeing how much happier he is now serves as a constant reminder of just how badly I messed up. It's hard to process, but I'm trying to use it as motivation to be a better person. I've been doing a lot of reflecting lately, examining my actions and the choices that brought me to this point. It's been a humbling and painful experience, but necessary. I've also started therapy, which has been incredibly helpful. My therapist is helping me unpack my issues and understand why I behaved the way I did. It's a long road, but I'm committed to making real changes and becoming a better version of myself. So, this is my latest and final update. I'm trying to stay positive and focus on building a future for myself. It's difficult, but I'm taking it one day at a time. To everyone who offered kind and constructive advice, thank you. Your support has meant more than I can express. To those who continue to send hate, please just let it go. We all make mistakes, and I'm doing my best to learn from mine. Life is too short to hold on to so much negativity. Thanks for reading, and take care.